200 years ago, Smith's News started delivering the nation's newspapers. The way we consume news has changed, but the company has evolved too without losing its traditional values. Today, the market cap is £88 million. Jon Bunting is the chief executive and Paul Baker, the chief financial officer. Now, gentlemen, this company is very dear to me because my career started off as a newspaper delivery girl at the age of 11, which I think was illegal then. I used to carry my own weight in newspapers. And still to this day, my preferred way to consume news is with a hard copy, is with a newspaper. So others prefer to read online. So how many newspapers does Smith News deliver?
Oh, that's a very good question. If you think about it on a monthly basis, it would be nearer 75 million individual copies. And if you were to think about it from a magazine perspective, because obviously we're the UK's largest distributor of magazines as well, that would be more like 24, 25 million. So combined about 100 million every single month. So yes, you're absolutely right. Some people prefer to access media now online, but thank goodness lots and lots and lots of consumers still enjoy the printed product. And yeah, we remain the number one in the UK with 56% market share. We deliver to 24,000 customers every day except Christmas Day.
Okay, I think you're allowed one day off. That 56% share of the UK newspaper and magazine market, though, are you chasing the remainder?
So we are very fortunate. We have a 5-year contract cycle. And so 95% of our revenues are now secured until at least 2024. So for the next couple of years, it's not really around growing our market share. It's really around doing other things. So Paul will talk about it in terms of what we're doing around debt, what we're doing around dividends, and I'll come on to talk a bit about growth going forward. But so for the time being, the focus isn't on market share growth. It's really on lots of other things which we think will create value for our shareholders.
So for the investors who aren't familiar with Smith's News, because they haven't been delivering newspapers since the year dot, and they haven't been around for 200 years. If I was to own a corner shop and I got a phone call from Smith's News, what would you be offering me?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So we distribute to every type of retail channel that takes newspapers and magazines. So whether that's a small independent newsagent, as you've just mentioned, a large supermarket like Tesco's or Sainsbury's, WHSmith on the high street, you name it, we go there. So actually through lockdown, which was really interesting, we saw a change in behaviours. So people stopped commuting for all the reasons we understand, and were buying locally, but it didn't really make much difference to us because we were distributing to the railway station and we were distributing to the local newsagent or convenience store. So our offer is really straightforward. We will pack and deliver a range of magazines and newspapers for you. We'll deliver it before 7 a.m. in the morning, every single morning, and we'll do that, you know, with a smile on our face and being very proud to distribute the national press. And our delivery promise is 99.5% pack accuracy. We get to 95% of our outlets in advance of their required delivery time. And if you think about it, you have to deliver the press early in the morning. No one wants to have their product delivered to them in the afternoon. It's not like another product, you know, like another product category. So yeah, our subcontracted drivers, our warehouse operatives, all of our head office staff take great pride in the fact that we do distribute the country's national press.
Now, Paul, I can see that you're still smiling. You were brought in to be Chief Financial Officer quite recently, but you've come into a company that's dealing with a mature market. So you must have your own ideas. How do you intend to diversify and help continue the company's evolution?
I mean, I think the first thing is building on what's just happened in the last couple of years. I think the business has refocused on its core, on that news and mags that Jon talked about, which is still a very big and resilient market. And I think it's about making sure from a finance perspective, we use that core market to pay down our debt, make sure we've got a strong dividend cover, and making sure we've got the right banking arrangements to reward our stakeholders. And you'll have seen just before Christmas, we announced a refinancing of the business. So we were able to negotiate with our banking providers a facility that increased our ability to distribute dividends from a cap that had previously been in place of 6 million per annum for 22 and 23, to increase that to 10 million. So we're now able to distribute up to 10 million per annum from this fiscal year onwards going forward, in a new financing arrangement that covers us now until 2025. And we continue to pay down that debt. So this banking facility is strong and robust and gets us through the next publisher cycle of negotiations. But at the fiscal year just finished, which was August 21, the net debt to EBITDA ratio for the business was 1.2 times. A year before, it was 2 times. So in a year, it had written down its debt to 1.2 times net debt to EBITDA, and we see that continuing into the future. And we will, we've said we'll be below 1 times at the half year. So I think it's a really good news story that the business has been able to generate the free cash flow and pay down that debt.
Now, a little bit of debt is useful. It's good. It helps your credit profile. But what's the ultimate aim? Is to eradicate it almost completely?
No, so we have a stated capital allocation policy. We've got a stated cover of 1 times, which we'd like to maintain. Our current banking facilities mean that we're restricted in how much of the free cash flow we can pay out, and therefore we're likely to see our net debt to EBITDA reduce a bit below 1 times in the short term, whilst that cap remains in place. I mean, the good news is the business, last year generated 24 million of free cash flow, which was an increase of 120% on the 2020 number. So a really strong free cash flow, which we're able to distribute 10 million. So you can see from that the dynamics of the business will mean that net debt to EBITDA in the short term, with some restrictions, will come below 1. But our stated aim is to maintain a 1 times ratio in the longer term.
So 120% increase is incredible. How did you manage to achieve that?
I think the business did it on a number of things. Clearly, it was lapping COVID, so it had the impact of the 2020 lockdown. The first lockdown impacted the business with the shutting of WHSmith's travel and some of the retail outlets. I think since that first lockdown, the business has been much more robust and hasn't really seen the impact of COVID, as John rightly sort of articulates, that it was just a switch between channels. But that first lockdown in 2020 did impact the business. So that was one of the reasons. And CapEx was higher in that 2020 year as well, with the Tuffnells business still being part of the group. So since then, the Tuffnells divestment and the refocusing onto the core news and mags business have meant that the cash flow generation from that core business, which has always been strong, has now just been highlighted.
John, talk me through the family tree, because Paul just mentioned Tuffnells then.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we originally started as part of WHSmith 200 and odd years ago. In fact, we were the founding business of WHSmith, the name we all know now on the high street in travel. But in 2006, we demerged and became our own separate PLC. And then we had a phase where we acquired and sold a number of businesses. Some went really well, some less so. But we then, over the last 2 to 3 years, have simplified the business right back, cleaned up the balance sheet. We disposed of Tuffnells, and we're now in a really firm place. So as Paul said, our debt's coming down nicely. You can see the sort of level of free cash we're throwing off, which means that we can do one of 2 things. We can either, or 3 things, continue to pay down the debt, continue to reward our shareholders, or if we find things that we think will be additive in the way we think about the business going forward and can provide new growth for the business, we have the free cash that will enable us to do that as well. So we find ourselves in a strong position, and I think we've worked hard over the last 2 to 3 years to rebuild trust in the business and explain a bit more about our markets, because it's really interesting the point you made right at the start of the interview about some people like print, some people like digital. And I think if you asked our publisher clients probably 5 or 6 years ago, they would have said, well, the future is clearly digital, and what we'll end up doing is we'll end up substituting print readers for digital readers, and that's how their business will evolve. Of course, what they now know is that that's not quite how it's likely to evolve. In fact, what they know is a lot of their readers like to access product from a print perspective, and you're one of them, thank goodness. And some like to do it from a digital, but they're not necessarily discrete people. Some want to do it differently at different times. So maybe they want to access an article when they're on the train going to work on their iPad, but on a Sunday morning, they want to spread the paper out and read it over breakfast or whatever else they want to do. So they now really talk about, if you talk to a publisher now, they very much talk about a blended model where consumers have the ability to access content either digitally or print with them. And rather than digital being a substitute for print, it's now complementary. So I think from my perspective, that's the really interesting thing, is that no longer is anybody talking about print dying. They're talking about print being in structural decline, but it is quite a slow decline, circa 5 percentage points per annum. And increasingly, publishers are talking about how do we provide more value, more content to that very loyal readership.
And in terms of the value that you're giving to your customers, let's talk about mobilization and digitization, because you've realized that your business, like news, is a 24-hour operation, and you've developed an app called Snap.
Yeah, this is a very simple app that enables our retail customers to transact with us at a time of their choosing. So if they want to call us, they can, and we've got absolutely fabulous call stats in terms of our ability to pick the phone up quickly and answer and resolve queries and all that kind of good stuff. But we recognize that's not what everybody wants to do. Some people now want to use the app and do it in the early hours of the morning, or whenever they want to do it, it's up to them. So that's what they do. So 65% of our customers use the app, not necessarily every day, but certainly most weeks. But we still have a good chunk of customers who like to pick the phone up and talk to us, and that's absolutely fine too.
So Paul, part of your job is sort of budgets for personnel. You've got a little bit of an HR role as well. So one of the first things I see when I visit your website is self-employed driver and van opportunities. Now I could read this two ways, which is you're expanding, or that there is a driver shortage and you're a little bit concerned. So how should I interpret that?
Well, I think the good news is we shouldn't be overly worried. So I think, as Jon articulated, our service levels are still very robust and strong. But like all businesses, especially late September, October last year, we felt the pain of driver shortages in the UK. And it wasn't just driver shortages in the contractor space; it was also warehouse operatives, especially through the peak of Black Friday and the Christmas period, where a lot of people, after 2 years of unfortunately having to work from home, engaged in that shopping online and got more people to deliver to them at their home rather than shopping outside of their home, and that put a pressure on the van drivers in the UK. We saw that, and what happened was our vacancies, which would normally be at a much lower level, just increased a bit, which put pressure on what we do to cope with vacancies in the short term. We use internal resources, and we use agency drivers to try and manage that shortage. That puts a little bit of cost into it, but also a bit more pressure. So that's why you see us advertising right now, particularly just in January, where the pressure of Black Friday and Christmas has now gone away. Some of the people that had gone into that seasonal delivery are now back in the market, and we're reaching out to say we do have some vacancies, and we'd like you to consider Smith's News to be a place that bring your van and engage with us and to deliver our papers on a nightly basis. So we're hoping to see, and we've seen some really good traction as some of our advertising has taken shape recently. We see those vacancies come down.
Yeah, that's a really good summary. I mean, the only thing I would add to that, Sarah, is a bit like I mentioned at the start of this conversation, really, but many other distribution businesses in November and December were under the same pressure, but they had the ability to say, well, maybe we'll deliver a 48-hour customer promise, or we'll deliver in the afternoon. We don't have that option. So it's really important that we do have as full a complement of subcontractor drivers as we need to make sure we continue to provide that service offer for our customers. And that's why we're always recruiting, either to actively fill the vacancies we've got, or to build a pipeline of people that we know we can turn to when the next vacancy comes around.
And really good people alleviate pressure. There's been another excellent recruitment in the form of Lucy Robertson. She's been appointed as the company's new operations director. Now, she worked with Yodel. What will she bring?
Yeah, I'm delighted that we've recruited Lucy. The vacancy comes around because of our previous operations director, Phil Adams, has retired after 43 years service, can you believe? So not all as operations director, only 3 years as the operations director, but Phil has thoroughly earned his time in retirement now. So we've had a very extensive search of the market looking for particular characteristics. I have to say Lucy was an outstanding candidate from the outset. And we had some very good conversations very quickly, Lucy and I, and so I'm delighted we've got her on board. She will undoubtedly bring a fresh perspective, that I'm clear on. She's got lots of experience, as you say, in various businesses, McKesson's, Yodel, Amazon. So she'll bring that perspective with her. She'll bring, no doubt, some insights as to how other people are undertaking tasks that we're challenged with in the news and magazine sector. I'm hoping she's got a little black book of very talented people that she wants to bring with her at some point too, because we're always looking to ensure we've got a robust succession plan in the business. So I think that fresh perspective, hopefully some good contacts around to strengthen our succession, and really importantly for me as the leader of the business is the right value set. Our business is a very values-driven business, and as an executive team, we're very collegiate in the way we discuss things, very collaborative in the way we run the business. And I think she'll fit in just perfectly with that. So she's very clear about what she wants to deliver, but she knows we deliver through our colleagues and by working in partnership with each other and our supply chain partners. And I think that's exactly her style too.
So you're value driven. You haven't lost sight of the traditional values on which the company was founded all those centuries ago. 2021 was a big year for the company. You refinanced, and I kind of get the feeling that you were deconstructing and now you are reconstructing. So how is 2022 going to pan out? Because so much happened last year. Are you bedding down this year?
You know, we've had a really busy 2 and a bit years, in truth, and I'm really pleased with the progress we're making. So far, because our financial year starts on September the 1st, as you know, as we updated at the AGM, we're exactly where we thought we would be from a trading perspective, which is good. We're making good progress in a number of other areas that we think are important for the future profitability of the business. So actually, rather than it bedding down, I think we're in a period where we're really starting to put our foot down on the accelerator, and it feels a really exciting place to be. So
Paul, you are one of the 2 money men. The other one is sat next to you. What is your priority for the year?
You know, I think as John alluded to, we've got a number of things that we need to do. We've got to deliver our targets. I think the one thing the business has done really well, which I think our stakeholders and shareholders look to the business now to do, is to deliver on its promises. And we continue to do that. And you know, last year's results were exceptional results. You know, Tony, my predecessor, did a great job and called up the number last year at the half year, and we just beat that last year as well. So I think delivering on promises is number one of my role, to make sure we do that effectively and efficiently. And then, you know, being a business partner with John and the executive team to make sure when we're looking at those choices for the future, we choose the right things. We're very mindful of things that have gone in the past, and we're very thoughtful about things, making sure we do things organically and slowly to make sure we can leverage value without creating any shocks in the core of news and mags and the core of that free cash flow we talked about.
But some shocks are good where the news is concerned, gentlemen. Paul Baker, Chief Financial Officer, Jon Bunting, Chief Executive of Smiths News. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.